There you go.
Okay. All right, the red light's on. I always have to make sure that, okay, the timer's going. The timer's going. All right. Hello, I'm Michael Cook on January 29th, 2025. I'm with the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation's Share Your Story project. Bellevue University is a sponsor of the NVVMF Memorial Park, and I am at the Lincoln County Historical Museum in North Platte, Nebraska, with veteran Thomas Rivera, who has agreed to share his story for the Library of Congress Vietnam History Project and the Nebraska Vietnam Memorial Park Project. Tom, let's begin with your full name.
Thomas Edward Rivera.
Okay. Where were you born?
Right here in North Platte, Nebraska.
Okay. And
about 2 miles from here.
About 2 miles from here.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay. And tell me about your parents.
Well, my dad was born in Mexico, and my mom in Kansas. Migrated here along with my grandparents. Mm-hmm. And that's that 2 mile location I was telling you about, is where my granddad had a little farm, 60 acres, and he farmed it and gave us a couple acres, and we built a house, and that's where I was born.
Uh-huh. Okay. When did your grandparents come here?
I'm thinking 1923.
1923. Okay. So they were here quite a while.
Yeah.
How about that? And since it was a farm, I'm assuming that your grandparents and your mom and dad were farmers?
Yeah, my dad was worked for the railroad, the PFE, Pacific Fruit Express, mm-hmm. And my granddad had cows, pigs, chickens, things, and he did some sugar beets and corn, and we helped him as we got a little older. And
mm-hmm. Okay. How about the women in the family?
My mother, I have all brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mom.
What did she do?
Pretty much housekeeper. You know, she raised us, stay at home. Yeah.
Okay. And you said brothers?
Yes.
How many brothers do you have?
Well, I had 5 brothers, so there were 6 of us together.
Well, any girls?
No girls.
No girls. Huh? Oh, I bet mom was thrilled.
Yeah.
Okay. What were the brothers' names?
Oh, Philip was my oldest brother. Then Steve.
Okay, now go slow.
He was a Navy man.
Okay.
And then myself, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And below me was David.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was Larry.
All right.
And he was an Army guy. And Gilbert was the baby, the youngest.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Wow. Okay. All right. And you say you had Steve was in the Navy and Larry was in the Army.
Yes.
All right. Did they serve in Vietnam, or were they?
Larry did. Steve didn't. Steve didn't get out of country. He was a corpsman.
Uh-huh.
And just served here in the States.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. School, I assume you went to North Platte High?
Yes, I did.
All right. And did you go to college?
No college.
No college?
I was lucky to make it out of high school. I'll be truthful with you.
A
football coach is the one that's attributed to keeping me in there and keeping me in line.
There you go. Okay, what did your parents and your brothers feel about you going into the service?
Well, I was drafted, and they were pretty much like me. We just kind of take things as they come. You know, my dad was pretty proud of us. You know, being an immigrant, and we had so much to be thankful for here, and that's just the way it was, you know.
And you said that your dad came from Mexico?
Yes.
Where? Where in Mexico?
Guanajuato, or right the province of Leon. I'm not real up on that. So,
So not just right on the border, but quite a ways down in the
he
country.
was down in, and we had
Yeah.
Later on, my dad and mom went there, and they had cousins, and they had a shoe factory down there. They were pretty well to do. Had their own airplane, and
that's interesting.
they were. We have some pictures of when that was in 1965. They went there.
Very good. All right. Well, were you weren't married when you joined the service, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. And okay, what kind of jobs did you hold? Or did you come straight out of high school, or did you work some before?
No, I worked for my uncle. He had a gas station in town, and I started working for him when I was 13 years old, and helped out quite a bit, and even had kind of a little title of assistant manager, which was more of a title than anything else.
Probably like me. You got a buck and a quarter an hour?
Yeah, if that. I think it was a buck to start with.
It was a buck, yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Well, okay, so you're going into the service. Where did you enter the service?
Went into basic training in Fort Bliss, Texas.
All right. How'd you get there?
Well, I'm trying to think. I know my memory's not as good as it used to be, but we flew there, and I'm trying to think of how. I don't believe it was military. It was commercial plane.
Okay. So you flew to Fort Bliss?
Fort Bliss, Texas.
Okay.
Right out there at El Paso.
All right. And you say you were drafted. You were drafted.
It was drafted, yes.
Okay. Where did you fly out of to go to Fort Bliss? Did you? Was it here?
Omaha.
Or Omaha? Okay. All right. Okay. And obviously, why did you join the service? Well, I was drafted.
I was drafted, and I was kind of I was a wanderer. I really didn't have any ambitions or anything I was really gonna look out for. I got a story, but I don't know if I should tell it or not.
That's up to you.
Well, I actually got my draft notice while I was spending a little time in jail.
Oh.
And so the military sometimes kind of gets you on your feet. I was, like I said, was running it. It was really for minor offenses. I lost my license and was taking my girlfriend out to the lake, and I made a U-turn and a little too tight, and they got me for driving under suspension. And back in those days, there was no fine. My dad was very upset. He wanted to pay a fine. He didn't want me to spend. It was a 30-day deal. And so while I was in there, I received my notice.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had a girlfriend. I'm assuming that she wasn't probably too happy with you going into the service.
Well, young and dumb. Like I said, just kind of floating around, and I just shrugged my shoulders, and that's basically how I've lived my life. I kind of just take it as the wind blows, you know.
Okay.
And I've made some pretty good decisions. And,
all right. And what branch of the service did you go in, and why? I mean, was there a choice?
What do you mean by branch? Army?
Army, Navy?
No, I didn't have a choice. I was drafted into the Army.
So you went into the Army. Okay.
They just said, show up here.
Okay. And So there was no choice to it. It was just, you're in the Army.
That's right.
The reason I'm asking is, I know some of the guys that were drafted, they said they went to the draft center, to the induction center, and they'd say, okay, you 15 guys, Marines, you 10 guys, Army, and, or whatever.
I did see a couple of guys do that were in the, ended up in the Marines because of that, but in our section, they didn't give us, they just said you were in the Army.
Okay. And you mentioned that your point of entry was at Fort Bliss, and that you flew there. So let's see. Okay, so basic training. Now we're going to go to basic training. Where is that going to be?
Well, the basic was in Fort Bliss, Texas.
It was at Fort Bliss.
Yeah. And then after that, I received orders to go to helicopter maintenance and mechanic, and that was short-lived. They changed it before we ever got out of there, and going to send me to Fort Gordon, Georgia for airborne area IT and infantry training. And when I was done with that, I had orders to go into Fort Benning, Georgia for jump school.
Okay. So you had advanced infantry training, and then you went to jump school. And let me ask you, your time in training, what was the best part of that? Any best part, and what was the worst part?
I enjoyed the training. Like I said, I was kind of just floating in life, and it was nice to have some structure, and I really liked what we called the black hats. There were trainers there in Fort Benning. I thought in my mind when I got out of Vietnam, I wanted to come back to Fort Benning and do that. But I was short time and homesick and wanted to get home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any of those individuals, those instructors that you recall, or
No.
stands out? Just
No, I can see them in my mind, but that's about it. It was a good time, and we worked hard early in the mornings, and like I said, it kind of started giving me my life a little meaning. I was growing in maturity, I'd like to say.
all right. Well, okay, so you're out of your basic training and schooling, and what's your first assignment?
Well, actually, they after jump school, I was in the 101st Airborne, and they sent me to do a class, a non-commissioners officers training, and I arrived there and was all ready to go, and they called me into the office and wanted me to extend for a year for that. And I told them that I didn't think that was what I intended to do, and they told me that I couldn't go to this non-commissioned officer school if I was not going to sign papers to extend my time. So they sent me to a casualty company, which is basically just working in this big storage, some packing parachutes, putting away military goods and shelving and stuff like that. And that was for about a month before I got new orders to cut to go to Vietnam.
Okay. And where was that at? That you were?
That was in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Oh, that's Fort
Yeah.
Benning. Okay. All right. Okay, so you are arriving in Vietnam.
I arrived in Cam Bay, and we flew an Eastern airline in commercial jet. And one of the funny stories that I like to tell is that the stewardess on there came and said, well, we'll be landing in Vietnam in approximately 20-30 minutes. And I looked at my buddy and they're sitting next to me, and I says, I have no rifle, I have no gun, we're in khakis. I says, we thought we were gonna get off the plane dodging bullets, running. We had no idea what we were getting into. Well, we got there, it was just like a very peaceful and beautiful country, and was a little surprised by that. After a day, they put us in a big orientation class and room, and was giving us a kind of a what to do and what not to do and what to expect. And then they said the 173rd Airborne just took a pretty good beating at Dock Toe, that everybody on the right side of the aisle is now in the 173rd Airborne. And that's how I entered into the 173rd from the 101st.
Okay. And they outfitted you with jungle fatigues.
Yep,
and,
they geared us all up and said we'd be flying in. Well, actually 2 days after they told us we were in the 173rd, and just said be prepared for anything, and we weren't. We got off the choppers and stepping over body bags, and very frightening, very not knowing what's going to happen. And Sergeant Cook kind of walked up and down the line looking at us and picked up an M60 machine gun, and he kind of shoved it in my hand or my arm and said, we lost our gunner yesterday, this is yours. He said, take care of it.
Okay.
It was, it was kind of I hadn't had a whole lot of training on a 60. I did fire it while I was in training, but.
Well, let me ask you a question there. What specialized items did you get trained on while you were in your training? Obviously, two that come to mind is you got trained on a 60.
16, M16. We did do a little bit of a 45 handgun. I think a lot of it was preparing us for the jungle. There in Georgia, the swampy area. They did a lot. We did quite a bit of night work. They would take us and drop us off, and they made us go back in the dark, trying to find our way with a few little flashlights. And we would get into some swampy area, not knowing, here I am from Nebraska, and they're talking about water moccasins and all this other stuff, and it was just quite the experience. And that's basically what they were getting us ready for, is actually the struggle in the jungle type area, and just, whatever comes along, expect it to be,
Now, you did parachute jumps.
Yes.
In training.
Yes.
Okay. So that was another specialty area, right?
Yes.
You didn't pack them. I mean, you packed them when you were in that area.
Well, we didn't pack them so much. We did a little bit of just storage and putting them away after mostly someone else packed them. And
but you never really got trained on how to pack.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So you're kind of relying on somebody else knowing what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Now, when you got to Vietnam, you didn't do any jumps in Vietnam, did you?
No, they did. They had stopped that not long before we got there. There was too much casualties going on, and it was not a very smart deal. There was too much jungle, too many snipers. Luckily, we did get the jump pay all the time I was in Vietnam, but we didn't do any combat jumps, no.
All right. Well, now you're in Vietnam. What's I guess the routine for you while you're there? What there's patrols, and you fly to a hot zone and get off the helicopter. And what's the basic routine for you when you're doing all this?
We would drop into sometimes a hot LZ, sometimes a Z that they just basically wanted us to go find out who's there, what they're doing there, if they're there. We did a lot of, we were in the Central Highlands around Anke a lot of climbing. That's why we called us grunts. That's what they say. What did you like? I was a grunt. Because everybody says, what's a grunt? Well, every step you took was a grunt. You get hooked with a wait a minute vine, mm-hmm. Something's holding, snagging you, and the guy behind you had to come and turn you loose. And
I'd never heard him called a wait a minute vine before.
Yep, wait a minute. Yep, you'd be going like this, wait a minute. And we were a lot of search and surveillance.
A lot of recon.
Right, and we'd get into skirmishes and move on. We were never big groups. A lot of guys would ask me after that, well, where were you at? What'd you do? I says, it all looked the same to me. It was all jungle, and we didn't know a lot where we were at. I had a few times they'd pick us up, and the pilot would say, you're coming out of Laos, or you just came out of Cambodia, and we had no idea we were even there.
That's interesting. All right. Okay, were you promoted while you were in Vietnam?
I was voted to 4. I got a story to tell, but
go ahead.
There's another one. I thought I was getting promoted to sergeant, an E5, and I was the lead gunner, and we'd humped into a fire support base, and they were kind of having me go around and to my other gunners and ask them if they needed anything, DX or anything. They're going to supply us the next day. And I got to thinking. I said, well, my trigger was hanging up. I was having a little trouble with my trigger mechanism. Well, you just pop 2 pins out and you pull that trigger mechanism out. Well, I stood it on the butt end, pointed up, pulled them 2 pins out, and I had a short link in there of about 14 rounds, mm-hmm. and they just automatically shot in the air. 2 of them hit a Chinook.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that was a whole big deal. They the pilot was gonna come down there and I don't know, I guess he was pretty upset, which I can understand, but it was an accident. I was in a hurry, and luckily nobody got hurt. But they said something about that promotion I was up for was not going to happen because of that. But Lieutenant Cooper swore up and down. He says, I'll get it for you. We'll work at it, get it for you. Well, I never did, as that I know of, ever got it. So I was an E4 when I left, which is fine with me.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you a question here. What got you through the hard times when you were in Vietnam? Was it luck? Was it family? Thinking of family? Was it?
It was all that. I wasn't married. I didn't even really have a good girlfriend. We really didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And if you did, you know, I think you probably would have had a lot of problems in your head. You better think straight. Our biggest thoughts were carrying enough water and good water, especially when they come in with those lurps. I got a little tired of sea rations, and I like my lurps, so I'd always trade my sea rations for lurps. But along with that, you had to carry more water.
Mm-hmm.
And
explain lurps, because there's some people that aren't going to.
Long range patrol meals are dry, dehydrated.
Right.
You pull the bag open and you pour some. Take your C4 and you boil a little water and you pour it in there and stir it up, and pretty good little meal. I never did like that. That's why I never did. For a long time, I didn't put those Halazone tablets in because of that iodine taste in your water.
Yeah.
We're supposed to put them in our canteen tablets, and I refused to do it for a long time. And we'd always fill our canteens at the bottom of the lake when we start, or pond or creek, before we start climbing and going into the deeper jungle. And I wouldn't take them, and we got about halfway up, and we were crossing a creek, and it was a shallow area, and we seen these humps, and there's water flowing over those humps, and we got a little closer, and what they were was 3 Viet Cong laying there, and they had bloated, and they were oozing up, and the water was flowing over them, and I started taking my Halazone tablets after that.
Yeah.
I know, well,
I can relate to that. All right. Okay. How did your time in Vietnam change you? Did it change you at all?
Well, like I said, I like to think I grew up some, matured. Of course, you're going to do that with age anyway, but you just have to take things as they go, and I've always said that about myself. That I was thankful for that I didn't really expect a lot, and I just tried to go along with the flow. And when I got malaria, and I was in pretty bad shape and really feverish and weak, and they came in and picked me up and took me back to the rear for about a week, drew a lot of blood and put me on meds, and I thought I was going to get to go to Japan, but that didn't happen. They said, no, we're sending you back out to the jungle. Oh man. But like I said, you just shrug your shoulders and go on. You're still on your own 2 feet. I wanted to go to I'm losing my train of thought here. R&R, and I kept refusing to put in for it because I wanted to go to either Australia or Hawaii. And they kept saying, well, they were always full, always full, always full. And I said, what about me? You know, I wanted to go there. And they brought us in some supplies one day, and they said, is there a Rivera here? Yeah, he's over there next to his 60. And they came and got me, and he said, tell him he's going to take an R&R now or he's not going to get one. I was in my 10th month. And as they say it, get short. And I says, Australia? No. Hawaii? No. Went to Bangkok, Thailand. So that was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big party. I would really have liked to went to Australia, but hey, some things you just better take as is and go. You know?
Exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about any friendships you developed while you were there. I'm sure you were pretty close to the other gunners and that, but
you know, I've got about 5 or 6 guys there that I can almost tell you their names and see their faces, but those are really the only ones. We didn't have time, and we really didn't want to get too close to anybody. I didn't anyway. I've always kind of wanted to get next to somebody, but I'm one of them guys that just, I guess I just don't take the effort. But I did have a guy from, now I'm losing my, I think he was from Pennsylvania. And after I was home for a couple years, I was walking across the street with my son, and he's just a little guy, and had a hold of his hand, and I held him close because I said, this guy looks a little weird to me back then. He was real shaggy, and he had a back on his back, and he was leaning over, and the closer I got, he smiled to me, and he said, Rivera. And I knew right who it was. It was old Glenn. I don't know if I can say his last name, but he stayed with me for about 3 months.
Oh.
Yeah, he'd got into he was one of those guys that had a hard time when he got back, and he left home, and he came and looked me up. We had a good time.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yep, and I got close to him, and I wish I'd have stayed close to him, but I didn't. He did send me one letter. He went back into the military. It's the last I remember, and like I said, he sent me that letter, and I don't believe I even responded, which now I wish I would have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, tell me some of your experiences that you had. Were there any funny ones, scary ones, sad ones, brave ones? Any type of experiences like that?
Well, yeah. I'll tell you one I got a story out of Fort Bliss, Texas. I don't know if you want to go that far back now, but
that's fine.
We were all standing. We just got there like 2 days, and we were standing around waiting for somebody to tell us what to do. Had these new greens on, and had this guy pull up in a little truck, and he reached down and looked at my name tag, and he said, Rivera, get in the truck. So I think, well, okay, waiting. I get in the back of the truck. We go to White Sands, New Mexico, which is not too far, but it seemed like a long ways. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder where we're going. Why did he pick me? And all that. But anyway, we finally get to this area, and they've got these groups of guys all standing around waiting for somebody to tell them what to do, and find out they were Puerto Ricans, Panamanians, and they were training them. And he says, get down there, and he says, you tell them to pick up every piece of paper that's not supposed to be there, cigarette butts, anything that's not supposed to be out there. It's just police the area up. So I get out there, my chest out, and I start to say, all right, you guys pick up the cigarette. He says, no. He says, tell them in Spanish. I said, I don't speak Spanish. He said, Rivera. I said, I'm from Nebraska. Get in the truck. he kind of blew the wind out of my sail. It wasn't my fault. He didn't ask me if I could speak Spanish, but he just, there in Texas, he seen Rivera, he just kind of took it for granted that I could speak the language. And on a sadder note, I had a good friend that I got and met him when we were in Cameron Bay, and we always joked around, and I'm always looking for souvenirs. In fact, I've got a Buddha that I brought back from Vietnam that we were at a sanctuary there, that little prayer sanctuary alongside the road that had been hit, and it was smoldering on fire, burned up. I was kicking around there, and it's about 8 or 10 inches tall, heavy brass. I thought it was gold at the time. I carried that thing for 2 or 3 months, and they polished up nice and threw it in my rucksack. And there's a few times I wanted to kick it out because That's 1 or 2 canteens of water. The weight of that was, and
Yeah.
I still have it. Yep, I brought it home. But he was a little smaller than I was, and we were always trying to get into. We hit these tunnels, and I wanted to go down there, and Lieutenant Cooper said no. He says gonna let him go, and I was mad. He says you go get your 60 and get up and secure this area up over here. And he goes down. My buddy goes down into the tunnel. After about 10 minutes, I hear this blast, and I run down there, and they're pulling him out. He set off a booby trap. He made it, as far as I know, but I never ever had a chance to talk to him or see him again. So those are things that kind of stick in your mind.
Well, let's see. I guess the last question I have there is, what was the best part of your military service?
Getting out.
Getting out. You'd be surprised how many times I've...
Yeah, no, it was good. Like I said, I just kind of float, and I kind of take each chapter or a page, and that's part of your life. When you turn the page, it's over. It's time to start another page. And that's kind of the way I look at life and things like that. And although when I first got back to, I hired on the railroad. And that was one of my things when I got out of the Army. I says, this is my life. I'm not going to listen to, I'm going to do what I want to do. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. Because I thought I had enough of that. Of course, I was young and dumb. And Joan got on the railroad, and I tell you what, if those two aren't the same, chain of command and all that,
Exactly.
crap goes downhill, and that's just the way it was. We were at the bottom.
You recall I take it you on the last part of your service, you went back to Cameron Bay to fly out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then where'd you go from there?
We flew back to Fort Lewis, Washington. We flew out of there on March 4th, and we flew back in. I can remember when we flew out of Fort Lewis, Washington, we were servers to the guys that were coming back from Vietnam. We served them a big steak dinner. And I thought to myself, well, this will be me one of these days coming in, and I'll be darned. On the March 4th, a year later, it was me flying back into Fort Lewis, Washington, and somebody served me a steak.
How about that?
Yeah, and I thought that was just pretty cool.
Okay. How was your reception while you were coming home, and you flew back eventually to you got back to North Platte? How was your reception? Did people good to you, bad to you?
It was okay. You know, I don't really remember. I hear a lot of stories about the way you were treated and baby killer and all that stuff. I never got that. I was thankful for that. I had a few good friends that met me at the airport, and I feel a little sad when I think about this. And my dad was all pumped up about me getting home and wanted to spend some time with me that evening. And here my buddies come with a car and pulled up, and some girls, and away we went. Yeah, I thought, wow, if I'd have loved to should have spent that time with Dad. And in my mind, I knew I was gonna come home and spend a lot of time there too. So, but as a homesick, wanted to get back to my buddies and my friends and family.
How did the service affect the way you relate to others? Did it influence your lifestyle or anything like that?
No, I don't believe so. I think my dad was very good about We were brought up with iron hand. We didn't get out of hand too much, and I mean we did, but he would always straighten us out. But that's one thing he always said, and I'll never forget him looking in my eye, and he says, "You're a Rivera," and he says, "You've got a good name in this town, and you better keep it good." And they raised us pretty strict. Not that we didn't go out of bounds, but they let us know it. And the Army really didn't, the military didn't, I don't believe, change me that much. I lived by the things that I was brought up the way.
Okay.
Some respect and stuff like that, just like our local police back when we were young. That's one thing that I remember them telling us, that they'd chew us out, and we'd be out partying or driving too fast, and they'd pull us over and they'd chew us. But they always said, that's one thing they always told me, that it says you always never back talked them, never yes sir, no sir. And maybe that did come from the military. I don't know. Could have.
Okay. Did you join any veterans organizations?
Not at first. We didn't have too much luck with the VFW and that when we first got home. Mm-hmm. They pretty much didn't want us there. I just shrugged my shoulders and said, well, it's one thing I was always taught too, is if they don't want you there, I don't want to be there. And I didn't. It took me a long time to get back into it. Of course, people change. Treated so much better now, of course, and that's one thing I want to think too, when we get these guys from these younger guys that come around, that hey, we respect them for what they did, and they were just like us when we went. Mm-hmm. And treat them with respect and some dignity. And
all right. So you are a member of the VFW now?
Yes, I am, in the American Legion.
And the American Legion.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I think we've covered some of my next questions here. You were talking, about how the service experience affected your life, and life lessons you learned from the military, and we went through quite a bit of that already.
Okay.
How do you feel about the military in general?
Well, I don't know much about it. I do hear some things that they don't have near the discipline they used to have. I know it was either do it or else when we were there, and now they pretty much got too many guidelines that they have to ask you, Mm-hmm. So I still love to see, some of the things and the respect, and I just hope they respect the military and respect our country and the flag, and but I don't know if the military has that say. It's the person themselves, the way they're taught and brought up.
Okay. What message would you leave for future generations? What would you tell, children or grandchildren about the military? What items that you feel that they should know?
Well, that's a tough one. It's our world is changing so much now that a lot of the things that I was taught to respect, and it doesn't seem that it, or they don't think it applies to them, but I think those are kind of should be a staple, you know. You live here, you love your country. I mean, not everything's right, and your political situation is all over the place, and so you have to stand your ground and your beliefs, and but I think the respect for your country, the flag, and the people that are in charge, I think to a point you have to. You just can't go by what you think is right or wrong. You have to dissect it and make sure you it's not you have to do it. You shouldn't have to do it. You should want to do it. You know, this is where you live. This is your country. This is respect for other people, respect for your country, respect for their ideas and your ideas, and that's how everybody's going to get along.
Yeah. Have you told your story to your family? Have you shared?
Somewhat, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know they're going to take a look at this, and it's going to, you know, they're going to have some questions.
Yeah.
So, are you prepared to tell?
I hope so.
Good.
Just like this interview, I didn't know what to say or how to take it. You just kind of hope it comes off the top of your head, and there's a lot of things I probably don't put it out in the right words, but yeah, you just got to take it for what it is.
All right. Is there anything that we needed to talk about that we haven't? Anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I'll probably think about it after I walk out of the building, but right now, no, I think we've done a good job, or you have, and I'm pretty patriotic. I don't think other people, you know, I can't inflict my views on somebody. They have, like I said earlier, they have to want to do it. You can't make somebody love their country or respect their country. You have to want to do it and feel it in your heart.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about one last question I've got for you is, what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
There's another one. I suppose everybody's situation's different. I don't look as anybody. I sure in hell don't want anybody to pity me, or you did this or you did that, or I feel sorry for you. Don't feel sorry for me. It's kind of like the old saying, you know. I don't want to go back, but I wouldn't trade my time back for what I did for anything. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I was there. I'm proud of it. I just think that's pretty much it. I just want people to, if you love your country, and if you're home and everything, you just self-respect, you know, from here. And I'm not gonna go push it on somebody. I've got a flag at home that I fly 24/7. I got a flag in my building that I fly 24/7. I got my military stuff I got laying around because I am very proud of it. And I'm very proud of it. And when people say, hey, thank you for your service, I'm proud. I thank them much, because they don't have to tell me that. There's some people probably don't believe that. But I appreciate it, and I tell them I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good. All right. Well, if you're ready, we can conclude this interview.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for taking the time, and I hope if anybody can get anything good out of this, I hope they do. I just, we are what we are, individuals.
Exactly.
Everybody's got their own thing, so.
All right. Well, we went right at 50 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you made it go fast.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for allowing me to do this interview with you. It's been very interesting. I learn a lot from each of the interviews that I do, and yours is no exception. I learned about 1 Minute Vine, which was something I hadn't heard.
Wait a minute, Vine.
Wait a minute, Vine.
Wait a minute, Vine.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, and it's been really a pleasure to visit with you.
Well, thank you.